Hello and welcome back to the channel, and in today's video we'll be looking at how to build this profile page UI. So let's start by looking at the breakdown of the UI. So if you want to build something like this, how do you start and which widgets will be very useful? So at the top of our page we have our app bar here, which will contain our title and then our action. Right, so our action is going to be this settings icon. Now within the body we are going to have a scrollable widget, because this as you can see from the design here, this should be something that the user can scroll if it doesn't fit the entire screen. So within that scrollable widget, which can either be a single child scroll view with a column or a list view, we are going to have a circle avatar. Right, so this portion will be a circle avatar with some text below it, and we'll have to center this in our scrollable widget. And an easy way we can do that is by making all of this a single component and then centering it, so that we don't have to center each widget, which is each text. Right, now after this section we are going to have the next section, which is going to be this text, and then this progress indicator. Right, and we are going to create this from scratch. We're not going to use any package. Also below that we are having our slidable card. So as you can see from the edge of the card, this should be slidable, so something like using a list view that is scrolling in the horizontal axis. Right, now the bottom part of it is just a list style but in a card form. So we are going to have a card, and then the child is going to be a list style with the leading icon here. We have our text, which is the title of the list style, and then we have our icon, that's our chevron right icon, and that is going to repeat for all these. Now at the bottom we are going to create a simple bottom navigation bar just to make the UI look okay. So let's get right into it and see how this actually looks in code. Okay, so here in VS Code I have a Flutter app running, and in the theme of my app I'm overriding the text theme with Poppins text theme from the Google Fonts package. So if you want to use the same text theme as mine, then you have to go to your pubspec.yaml file and add the Google Fonts package. Then after that you can choose the text theme you want to use, and in this case I'm using the Poppins text theme. Now in the home of my app I'm running a stateless widget called root app, and for now I'm returning a simple scaffold, just an empty one. So this is where I'll be starting, and let's first start from the bottom navigation bar. So within the bottom navigation bar we are going to pass in the bottom navigation bar widget, and then passing an items. Right, so after that we have to move the const. Now we have to pass in at least 2 bottom navigation bar items. So I'm going to pass in the bottom navigation bar item, which expects an icon. Right, so an icon is a widget. I'm going to use icon, then Cupertino icons dot home. This is the icon I'll be using, and then the label is going to be home. Now you have to have at least 2 of these, otherwise you have an error. I'm going to duplicate this 4 times and then save. Now you don't see anything on the screen, but I have my bottom navigation bar there. The colors are just white. So in order to fix that, you can come to your bottom navigation bar and change the colors individually as manually, or change the type of the bottom navigation bar. So I'm going to change the type of the bottom navigation bar to bottom navigation bar type.fix, and that will take care of that. So now my bottom navigation bar is visible. So let's quickly just change the icons and then the text. So I'm going to do that quickly, and so I've just changed the icons and then the text. So this are just random icons. You can use any icon for this. Actually the focus is not on the bottom navigation bar, so let's change the active index to the profile, so at least it makes sense that we are working on the profile page. I'm going to change the current index to 3 because we have 4 items and we start counting from 0, so that will make the profile active. Now the next thing is to work on our app bar. So within the app bar, I'm come to create just a simple app bar, and when I save, we have an app bar, the blue default app bar with some elevation. So let's make some customizations in our app bar. I'm first going to move the elevation from the app bar so that we don't have any shadows. So when I save, we should have no shadows on our app bar. Now next thing is to remove this blue background. So I'm going to change the background color to be transparent, and also change the foreground color because by default the color is going to be white. So I'm going to change the foreground color to a black color, right? So that's black, and when I save, we shouldn't have any background color. Now in our app bar, we are going to have our title, which is a text with the text profile, and then our actions. So the actions is anything that goes to the right. We are going to have an icon button for that. Don't press set as an empty function, and our icon is going to be icons.settings, and I want the rounded version. So if I save, we should have this in our actions. Now I want to center our title because by default on Android our title is aligned to the left, so we can use the center title property and set it to true. Now that will take care of the centering, and we are done with our app bar and our bottom navigation bar. So the next thing is our body, and within our body, as I said earlier, we'll be having a list view or a scrollable widget, which can be a single child scroll view with a column or a list view. I'm going to go for list view with this, and now the children of this list view will first be a column. So we are going to have a column that will contain the profile, right? So I'm going to have a column with some children, and we'll have to move the cons from here. So let me have a circle avatar. Yeah, so I'm going to have a circle avatar, and the size of the circle avatar is small for now, so I'm going to change the radius to somewhere 50. Yeah, so that will make the circle avatar huge, and also change the background image. So that's the image you want to use for the circle avatar, and I found some image on Splash, so I'm just going to copy it in because we didn't add any image to our asset. So background image is going to be a network image, and I'm going to pass in the URL to that image. So this is the URL, and when I save, we should have this beautiful lady here. Now, so the next thing after our circle avatar should be some space. So size a box with a height of 10, and then a text of the user's name, right? So for now I'm using this name, which is just a random name, and let's style the name a bit. So we are going to have a style of text style, and then pass in some font size and then a font weight. So I pass in a font size of 18 and a font weight of bold. After this, we're also going to have another text, and that can be the user's email, position, anything you want to put below, right? So for now I'm just going to place something like junior product designer. Yeah, and it looks good, right? You can either change the color, right, to something like gray, or leave it like this. I'm going to leave it like this for now. And the next thing is going to be outside our column, right? So outside our column, we are going to have a size box for spacing, then we are going to have a row, right? So the row is going to contain the text, the two texts, that's the level of completion of the profile. So I'm going to have a row with some children, and then the first text in this row is going to be complete your profile, right? So complete your profile like this. And when I save, we immediately realize that our text is touching the edges of our screen. So in order to fix that, come to the list view and then add some padding to the list view, right? So I'm going to add padding of all around and give it a value of 10. And when I do that, it gives padding all around this list view so that our content doesn't start from the edge of our screen. Now let's style this text a bit. So I want to have a font weight of bold. Using the style property, we can supply a text style and then pass in the font weight of bold. And now when we save, we have this bold text here, and we want to have another text which indicates remaining things left to set up. So something like 1 out of 5, which means we have 4 things to work on our profile. And if I do that, realize it's close to our complete or your profile. So I'm going to wrap this in a padding widget, so not a container but a padding widget, and give it a padding of only right and passing a value of 5, right? You can also do this using a rich text, right? So you have a rich text and then you pass in some text span and then you put in your text. So there are many ways of doing the same thing, right? You just have to understand the concept and know what you are doing. So with this text, I'm going to add some style to it, and the only thing I'm going to change here is the color, right? So I'm going to change the color to colors.blue, and it should look something like this. Now outside this row, we are going to have a sizer box for spacing, and then another row, right? So another row with some children. Now the children is going to be a completion indicator, so those dashes that shows if we have completed our profile. So in order to do that in a row, I'm going to use the list.generate function, and what that will do is it will loop over a particular length provided, and the generator will return something. So I'm going to pass in a value of 5, which is the number of times I want to loop, and the generator is a function which returns something, right? So for now we are going to return a container widget and add some height, so a container of height 7, and then a margin, right? So we want to have margin to separate the containers. So I'm going to have margin of edge insect dot only right of 6, right? So there'll be margin of 6 on each container. And finally a decoration, box decoration, border radius of circular, so I want to round the corners of this container a bit, passing a value of 10, and we can't see anything because we need a color. So let's pass in a color of colors.black 12. Yeah, that would be a gray color, and we still can't see anything because we are not having any width. So if I pass in a width of about 10, realize we have these small dashes, right? But we don't want to pass in a fixed width. We just want the container to take the available space. So in order to do that, let's wrap this container in a widget called expanded, which will make sure that the container just expands to fill the available space, right? So when we do that, realize we are having all these container expanding, and we are having a margin of 6 on the right. So you realize this container has a margin of 6 on the right, this container also has a margin of 6 on the right, and that's how come we are having this consistent spacing. But on the far right, we are having too much of margin, because that also gets getting a margin of 6 on the right. So in order to fix that, we can use the index to check. So if the index is equal to 4, right, because we start counting from 0 and we have 5 items, so if the index is equal to 4, that means we are on the last item. Therefore the right margin is going to be 0, else is going to be 6, and then we have to move the cons from here. So when we do that, realize this shifts a little. And also the color, we want to just make the first one blue, so we can use the index. If the index is equal to 0, which is the first item, they want to have a blue color, else we want to have our gradient. So this is equal to, right, and now this is how we create this design, right. Now up next is our cards. So just after this row, we are going to have another sizer box. So I'm going to copy this and then paste it just below the row, and we are going to have a scrollable widget. And in Flutter you can't nest two scrollable widgets unless you have a bounded height, right. So the idea of nesting scrollable widget is based on height, bounded height. If you don't have bounded height, we are going to run into an error, which is vertical viewport, or the viewport you are using has been given an unbounded height. So what we do is, I want to give a fixed size of where I'll be scrolling, right. So I want Flutter to know that I just want to make this portion of my UI scrollable in a particular direction. Aside that, everything should scroll the normal way. So in order to tell Flutter that, I'm going to have a sizer box of height 180, which is the height I want to be scrollable, and then the child is going to be a list view dot separated, right. So the separated is just a list view builder, right, but then it also has an item, a separator builder that we can use to separate each item in the list view. And I'm going to provide an item count of 3 for now, and then in our item builder function, I'm going to return a widget called card for now. So that's the default Flutter card. Now the separator builder is how we intend to separate this widgets that the item builder is returning. So I'm going to return another widget that will do the separation, and that is going to be a padding widget, and then the padding is going to be edge insects dot right sorry edge insert dot only, and then we pass in a right with a value of 5. Now we can't see anything on our screen because there are still some few things we have to do. First, the default scrolling direction of a list view is the vertical axis, right. So let's first change that one to horizontal. So the scroll direction is going to be axis dot horizontal, and we still can't see our card because our card doesn't have anything in it. And in order to see it, we can wrap our card in a sizer box to give it some sizing, right. So wrap it in a sizer box and give it a height a width of 160, right. And now we can see our cards, right. So and they are scrollable, but realize we have this glow effect when we try to over scroll. So in order to remove that, just within the list view, you can have the physics and then change it to bouncing scroll physics, so that makes sure that it bounces off the screen when you over scroll, right. Now let's work in our card. So within our card, I'm first going to change the shadow color because the color is too dark. So I'm going to change the shadow color to colors.black. Right, so now we have less shadow on our card, and within our card we are going to have a column. So the child of the card is going to be a column, and we have to move the cons from here as well. Now within the column we are going to have some children, right? And the first child is going to be an icon, and for now I can use icons dot person, right? And then passing the size. So I want to increase the size a bit to 30, and that will look a little huge. Also realize that our icon is touching the edges of our card, so we want to have some padding within the card itself. So we are going to wrap the column in a padding widget and give it a padding of all around 15, right? So we want to have padding within the card all around 15, so that pushes the icon down a bit and also make sure that nothing gets to the edges of the card. Now these icons will be changed later on, but for now we are just using them for the design. So let's first have a sizer box with height of 10, and then a title for our card. So I'm going to have a text that says let's say upload your resume, right? And let's center this text. So I'm going to the text align with text align dot center, and that will center our text. Also we want to have a button, so I'm going to use elevated button, and the child is going to be a text that says continue or upload. So upload for now, and we would have to remove the cons from here. Right, now we have something like this, and we want to push the button down to the lowest part of this card, right? We don't want to just have a sizer box that separates these two. So in order to do that, you can use the spacer widget just above the elevated button, and that will make sure to push everything down, right? So it's trying to push this upload button down, but it can't get to the edges of this card because of the padding we applied. Now let's style our button a little bit. So with the elevated button we have the style property we can use, and that's going to be elevated button dot style from, and I first want to change the elevation to be 0, so I don't want this default elevation, and I also want to change the border radius, right? So I'm going to utilize the shape property and then change it to rounded rectangle border shape. Then with this I can change the border radius, so I'm going to change the border radius to a circular border radius and then passing the value of 10. So when I do that, realize we get this little bit rounded button, right? Now that's for our cards. So the next now after our cards is our list of tiles, right? So just after this sizer box, which is the one constraining our list view, we are going to have another sizer box for spacing. So I'm going to copy the one here and then paste it here. Now the value is going to be 35 because we want match spacing, and we want to have a list of list styles. So just like we did for the containers here, I'm going to use the list.generate function and then passing the length. For now I'm going to pass the length of 5, and the generator is going to be a function that returns the UI want. So for now we are going to return a list style, that's the widget we want, and we get an error: the element type list style can't be assigned to the list type widget. So in order to fix this, just spread this out, right? So using the spread operator, that's the three dots before the list.generate, make sure it press this list style within our list view, if it makes sense. So when we save, we're not going to see anything, but if you supply in a title with a text like maybe notifications, then we can see our notifications here, right? So we first want this to be a card instead of just a normal list style. So the best thing we can do is to wrap this list style in a card widget, and that will give it the card look, right? And within the card we can change some properties. So you first change the elevation to be 4, and then change the shadow color to colors.black, and then pass in 12, so colors.black 12, and this is going to be the list style we have. Now in the list style, I want to have a right icon, which is the trailing icon, right? So trailing, and I'm going to pass in a widget which is an icon, and that's going to be our chevron right icon. So when I save, we realize all our list styles have this icon to the right of it. Now also we want to have a leading icon, so the leading is going to be an icon, and the icon we want is for now icons.notification. This notification add, right? And this is what we have. This is the UI we have. Now let's just create a dummy data for this UI. So just outside of our root app class, I'm coming to create a custom class which I'll call profile completion card. So class profile completion, now this is going to be the UI. This is going to contain the UI for our profile card. So every profile card should have a title, and then a button text, because we want to change the text of the button. It's not always going to be upload, and also an icon, and that's of type icon data icon. Now let's require this in the constructor of this class, and we are going to have a list of this profile completion card. So I'm going to have a list of profile completion card, call it profile completion card. Now each profile is going to have a name, a title, and then an icon and a button text, right? So it's going to look something like this. So we have profile completion card, which has a title, an icon, and then just like that, a button text. I'm also going to do same for this list style. So I'm going to create a class called custom list style. You can call it anything you want. So this is my class. It has an icon and a title, and I'm going to have a list of custom list styles. So I'm quickly going to create a list of custom list styles, right? So I have a list of custom list styles, and each of them has an icon and a title, an icon and a title, because the chevron icon is always going to be constant, so we don't have to pass that in. Now let's use this in our UI. So back to where we have our list.generate. So back to where we have our card, we can pass in the item count right now to be our profile completion card.length. And now within our item builder, instead of always having an icons.person, we can get that particular card, right? So you can create a variable called card, and that is going to be our profile completion card, right? So if I change this to profile completion cards. So that's going to be profile completion cards, and then index. So this is going to return us each individual profile completion card, and we can use the icon from that. So we are going to pass in our card.icon, and we have to move the cons from here as well. When we save, we have different icons for all our cards, right, based on the icon we pass in. And now the text is also going to be the same. So we are going to update the text to card.title, and we have to move the cons from here, and that will change our text for all the cards. So they set your profile details, upload your resume, and add your skills. Now the text for the button is also going to be different because we have a button text. So I'm going to card.button text, and we have to move the constant from here because it's no longer a constant. And when we save, realize we have different text for each button. Now we're going to do the same for our custom list style. So the length is no longer going to be 5, but it's going to be our custom list styles. So if I change that one to be plural, custom list styles dot length, and now we can have a tile. So each tile is a custom list styles index. This will return us each tile as it loops, so not title but tile. And we can have the tile dot icon, and we have to move the cons from here. So that will make sure we have different icons for all this. Now instead of the text being static, we are also going to have our tile.title and remove the cons from here as well. So that will make sure we have different icons. Also, I realize we don't have enough space here, so you can either give a custom spacing in our list view, or I can just wrap this card in a padding widget. So I'm going to wrap this card in a padding widget and give it a padding of only bottom with a value of 5. And now when I save, I have some space in here, right? So this is how you can create a UI like this. That's a profile page UI. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, please do well and subscribe as well. And let me know what you think. If you didn't get anything, if you have any questions, let me know in the comment section. Also, if you want me to create something, you can just put it in the comment section as well. And I'll see you in the next video.